At exactly 2:13 in the morning, the world seemed to stop because a drone captured the moment someone pushed another person off a cliff 8 months earlier. The Matson family had left Seattle for a quiet weekend at the Dusky Pines Preserve, and they never came back. There were no emergency calls. No one reported them missing during the first 48 hours, and by the time search teams arrived, all they found was a mud-caked SUV, some barely visible tire tracks, and a forest so eerily silent it was as if no one had ever set foot in it. The headlines faded. Attention shifted to newer, louder cases, but then something surfaced. Something even the technician who found it struggled to believe. A wildfire surveillance camera had captured a chilling scene. At the top of Mount Dusky, in the dead of night, two shadowy figures appeared through the mist. One stood behind the other, a single, deliberate motion, then a fall into darkness. We decided to trace the story back to the day they disappeared, and what we uncovered was just the truth. It was something far more haunting. Before the name Matson ever showed up in missing persons reports, they were just a regular family, maybe even the kind people secretly admired. They lived in a 3-story wooden house overlooking Lake Union, just north of Seattle. Lena Matson, 33, worked as an environmental engineer at a clean energy startup. She usually got up around 5 a.m., brewed a cup of black coffee, and started her day reviewing air sensor data from across the Pacific Northwest. Lena wasn't much of a talker, but her coworkers often described her as someone who got things done and noticed what everyone else missed. She loved nature so deeply that she never drove anywhere without her humidity meter and a personal notebook where she logged tiny changes in plants, rocks, and even the wind. Marcus Matson, 36, was a freelance landscape photographer, the kind of man with unruly curls, a beard, and eyes that always seemed to be chasing light. Headshot for major travel magazines in the past, but in recent years, Marcus had pivoted to teaching photography online and running a YouTube channel called Frame and Wild. On it, he and his family shared camping trips, nature adventures, and survival lessons. There was no loud music or flashy jump cuts, just wind, water, and honest laughter. In one video, he said, "I don't take pictures to make beautiful images. I take them so I can remember the way my daughter laughs when she sees a squirrel chewing a pine cone." They're twin kids. Jordan and Lela were just 9, but already used to waking up in sleeping bags, cooking breakfast on a mini gas stove, and telling bear tracks from deer prints. Jordan was the wild one, always climbing trees or kicking up dirt. Lila was quiet, always sketching tree branches, feathers, or imagined faces she'd seen in the woods. A teacher once said, "Lila's incredibly sensitive, like she can hear things coming up from the soil." One photo on Marcus's Instagram became iconic: Jordan running with a flashlight, the beam arching like a rainbow across a puddle, while Lila stood behind him, eyes closed, holding a pressed leaf between the pages of her sketchbook. The Matsons weren't famous, but among Washington State's tight-knit outdoor community, they were beloved, smart, kind, connected, and always respectful of nature, wherever they went. They left behind small notes for the next visitors, ticky messages like, "Bird nest nearby," "Keep quiet," or "Cold stream here," "Water's clean." They never left trash, only memories. So when news broke that they were missing, the community wasn't just shocked, they were angry. The Matsons weren't the kind of people who got lost in the woods. They were prepared. They knew the rules of nature, and they would never put anyone in the position of having to look for them. Their final trip began on a Friday morning in mid-June, just as the weather hit that perfect window for trekking. Their silver gray SUV was packed with backpacks, camera gear, tents, frozen meals, and a foldable kayak. Marcus posted one last story on Instagram, a photo of Lena tying Lila's shoelaces, captioned, "We're off. Be kind. Wild world." Nothing in their faces suggested anything out of the ordinary. Nothing hinted that. Within hours, they would vanish without a trace. Their destination was Dusky Pines, Preserve, a remote woodland on the western edge of Washington State. The area had been largely forgotten after a major wildfire swept through in 2004. Hardly anyone knew it existed, except for local tribes, ecologists, and a few mist-chasing photographers. Lena had told a coworker she wanted to study post-fire regrowth there. Marcus said he wanted to photograph Dusky Falls at sunrise, The light there looks like it's from another planet. He once said, the kids were just excited for the promise of getting to pitch their own tent for the first time. They planned to stay 3 days and return by Sunday night, along the way. They stopped at a gas station near a small town called Emery. Security footage showed Marcus paying at the register while Lena checked the spare tire. She asked the clerk about a shortcut trail to the dusky west lookout. Sure, he said, but that road's pretty rough. Lena nodded, thanked him, and drove off. That was the last confirmed sighting of the Matsons at least. Alive. Here's something critical. No one reported them missing during the first 48 hours. Lena had already told her sister who lives in Portland not to worry if they went off-grid. Marcus had scheduled videos in advance for his YouTube channel, so no one noticed his absence online. It wasn't until Monday night, when Lena missed her usual FaceTime call with her parents, and her sister got no answer except endless ringing, that concern set in. By the time the family called the police. It was Tuesday afternoon. The first search team reached Dusky Pines under a light drizzle. The path to their planned campsite was too narrow for vehicles, so rangers had to hike over 2 hours, and the first thing they found wasn't a person. It was a broken tent cord dangling from a tree, then a muddy spoon, then a torn photograph half of Marcus' face, the other half gone. The deeper they went into the area where the Matsons were supposed to set up camp, the stranger it became. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no footprints, but also no campfire, no trash, no trace that anyone had spent the night. It was like someone had intentionally erased them. Ranger Garrett described it like this. It felt like someone deleted them from the woods. Not nature, a person. When the family's SUV was eventually located, more than 7 miles from the main camp, it was locked, windows sealed, no signs of forced entry inside. A backup phone battery was still fully charged, a charger plugged in. Marcus' camera lay on the back seat body intact, but the memory card was gone. What chilled the search team to their core was what they found beneath the driver's seat, a small slip of paper, written in pencil. Don't come back here, not again. The handwriting was shaky, pressed deep like someone scrawled it in the dark or in a rush. No fingerprints, no way to trace it. That's when the media caught wind. Local true crime pages ran headlines like "Family vanishes and forest leaves no trace." Some speculated it was a camping accident or that they simply got lost. But for those who knew the Matsons, that didn't add up. Lena always carried 3 backup maps. Marcus had GPS. The kids had been trained to use emergency whistles since age 6. If they were lost, they'd have signaled. But no one did. No one called for help. There was one person no one talked about at first, but who later became a key piece of the puzzle, Devin Hartley, Marcus' best friend from college. The two had once photographed the Arizona desert together, hosted a podcast on nature photography, but Devin didn't join the search. He didn't share any missing persons posts. He gave no interviews. Then, a volunteer spotted a $7,000 Leica lens on eBay, the exact model Marcus had used in his latest video. The serial number matched. They traced the seller. It was Devin. When asked, he simply said, "Marcus sent it to me before the trip, said if anything happened, I should sell it." But according to warranty records, Marcus had never transferred ownership, and the last text Marcus ever sent to Devin, 2 days before vanishing, read only, "If you see anyone at Dusky, don't trust him. Don't go near him." There's one thing even the Matson family didn't know about Marcus. He'd nearly died once before, in that very same place, Dusky Pines. 3 days after the Matson family was officially declared missing, Dusky Pines became the center of an unprecedented search operation in the preserve's history. Rangers, rescue crews, local police, and nearly 60 volunteers fanned out in all directions, each equipped with maps, radios, GPS trackers, and emergency whistles. They set up a base camp in a clearing near Dusky Falls, believed to be the family's planned campsite, overhead. Drones flew in grid patterns, capturing every square meter of forest, on the ground. Scent tracking dogs tried to follow the trail using clothes provided by the family, but wild animal smells and heavy summer rain kept erasing the scent. Helicopters circled for hours each day, their cameras scanning rocky clearings, canyon edges, and narrow trails threading between ancient pines. But what they found was only silence, a silence so complete. It felt unnatural. What haunted many was the absolute absence of any sign of life. No campfire, no leftover food. No footprints around the site. Search crews described it as if the family had never been there at all, as if 4 people, 2 adults and 2 children, had simply been erased. One veteran ranger, who'd seen dozens of deep forest disappearances, admitted he'd never encountered anything like it. Authorities began checking camping stores, mechanics, gas stations, anyone who might have seen or spoken with the Matsons in their final 24 hours. But every lead led to the same point after leaving the gas station in Emory. Not a single person had seen them. Online. Theories began to spread. Some believed it was a tragic accidental fall, a landslide, maybe a snake bite. Others speculated about wild animal attacks, especially black bears or forest wolves known to roam dusky pines. But no one could explain the lack of blood or any signs of a struggle. And no one could answer the simplest question. If it was an accident, why didn't any of them send a signal? Every member of the family carried emergency beacons. Marcus wore a satellite-linked smartwatch. No one triggered anything. No one called for help. Then, during the second week, the first tangible clue emerged. Navy blue towel, folded neatly on the edge of a large rock by the stream leading into the western gorge. The fabric was still damp, like it had just been wrung out. It belonged to Lila, in their most recent family video. She'd used that exact towel to wipe her chin while eating breakfast porridge. The find sparked hope, but also raised a troubling question. How could it still be that fresh after nearly 10 days of rain? The towel led to a renewed search. This time, focused on the western gorge, notoriously dangerous area with slick rocks and dense vegetation. A mountain rescue team was brought in, armed with ropes, climbing gear, and thermal scanners to sweep the cliffs. They camped near a stone slab marked by worn sliding grooves, possibly where someone had sator fallen. Scratches on nearby trees, just at child height, suggested someone had tried to hold on. But what made everyone stop cold was a patch of pine branches, cleanly cut and laid in an X shape. Face down, a known distress symbol, passed down through old survival codes. But the weather turned again, short. Heavy rains washed away traces, turned trails to slush, and damaged equipment. A drone clipped a branch and crashed, forcing a temporary retreat. Meanwhile, investigators began combing through the family's digital footprint social accounts, emails, cloud storage hoping for a lead in Marcus's Google Drive. They found a hand-drawn map, marking a route not listed on any official trail system. It led to an area off GPS, nearly 3 miles north of Mount Dusky's peak. Beneath the markings, had written, "Shortcut best view at sunset. Private." That line caught the attention of police. Marcus wasn't a poetic type. He was meticulous, cautious. What had compelled him to chart such a place and not tell anyone, a small recon team was dispatched to check the map's coordinates. Along the way, they discovered something strange, a boulder carved with rough letters, etched by some sharp tool. The message was clumsy but readable. "Stay quiet." Below it, they found a torn food pouch, the kind sold only at a specialty store in the city. When staff reviewed their security footage, they found something chilling. 3 days before the Matsons vanished, a man wearing a hood and a bandana over his face had purchased that exact food and the same flashlight Lena had used. He paid cash, never spoke, but as he turned to leave, the camera caught the back of his jacket stitched with a swirling symbol almost identical to one Lila had drawn in her sketchbook. The final coordinates on Marcus' map led the team to a narrow canyon wedged between 2 sheer rock walls, an area so remote. It looked untouched by humans. They had to leave behind heavy gear, walk single file across a narrow stream with icy, glass-clear water flowing over slick stone. As they neared the edge, the sky dimmed. Low clouds descended. Light faded into gray. Then, one team member knelt and picked up a small object nestled beneath some brush. It was a worn fabric keychain shaped like an owl, with a stitched orange letter J. Jordan's. He'd been playing with it in their last vlog, swinging it like a toy before leaving camp. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The Matsons had been here, and maybe someone still was. Not long after. One of the team spotted strange markings on a nearby pine, a vertical gash about a hand's length long, as if someone had slashed it with a blade. Along the cut were repeating circular symbols, almost like eyes. A survival expert on the team, trained in tribal code systems, confirmed they didn't match any known signals. Higher up the cliff, they found vines carefully tied to form a crude climbing ladder, clearly meant for someone to ascend without pro gear. The team leader ordered a split. One group would scale the wall, the other would inspect the ledge below. Below, near the cliff base. The second team found a small cave, sealed with a perfectly fitted slab of rock. Inside, it was just big enough for one person to crouch. No one was there, but there were burn marks, ashes from paper and fabric. Amid the ash, a half-burned scrap stood out. Shaky handwriting, scrawled in panic. I hear him every night. He laughs when the kids cry. The edges were scorched, no name, but handwriting experts confirmed it matched Lena's notebook entries. Above, on the cliff top. The other group hadn't found much until one man slipped and grabbed a low-hanging branch. As he looked up, there it was, a trail cam strapped to the tree, its lens pointed directly at the canyon. The memory card was still inside. They pulled it, scanned the footage right there in the fading light. What they saw made the first viewer freeze, eyes wide, throat tight, hand gripping the screen. On the video, at 2:13 a.m., two figures stood at the edge of the rock, one taller, behind, the other smaller, toes at the cliff's edge. Then, suddenly, the figure in back lifted an arm, a push, and a body tumbled into darkness. News of the trail cam footage spread internally like wildfire. Local police immediately ordered forensic and digital verification. The results confirmed it: no editing, no manipulation. The camera was tilted slightly, and the image grainy under night vision mode, but clear enough. The figure in back was tall, wearing a hood pulled low and a long coat. The one in front, possibly one of the children, stood trembling, their face obscured. The shove happened in an instant, then just black. The video ran out in silence. No sound was recorded, or possibly it had never been enabled. A special task force was assembled: police, rangers, image analysts, and a criminal psychologist. They began reconstructing the family movements using phone data, GPS logs, physical traces, and biometric samples found at the site. But everywhere they looked, they hit gaps breaks in the timeline that made no sense. Marcus' smartwatch GPS showed his last location at the canyon entrance at 6:07 p.m. on the day they vanished. After that, nothing. Lena had a satellite-linked phone, but no emergency signals were sent. Still, regional data logs revealed something odd. An automated system ping-triggered when a phone registers a sudden drop in altitude occurred at exactly 2:13 a.m. The same time as the video. Investigators also revisited accounts from locals who'd interacted with Marcus and Lena in recent months. A camera store clerk in Seattle recalled Marcus asking about waterproof photo printers for printing out there in the woods. A flea market map vendor remembered Lena buying a hand-annotated map of an old forest zone, one closed for over 20 years due to landslides. But then came a game-changing tip. Tyra Lambert, who lived about 15 miles from Dusky, said she'd heard a scream that night, sharp, drawn out, like metal tearing. It was around 2 a.m. At the time, she assumed it was an animal, but after hearing news of the missing family, she couldn't shake the sound initially. Authorities dismissed it, but when they reviewed data from a nearby weather station, they discovered an acoustic anomaly at that exact time. High-frequency sound waves lasting 4 seconds, echoing 3 times off the canyon walls. The pattern matched Tyra's direction and matched the canyon's altitude and wind conditions from the video location. Following the trail cam footage, the search area was expanded northeast, toward a series of uncharted rock formations and gorges. There, they found signs of temporary habitation remains of an old fire, food packaging with recent expiration dates, and most notably, a strip of moss-green parachute fabric tied to a tree, a known survivalist signal. Dried blood on the cloth was later confirmed to match Lena Matson's DNA, but what puzzled investigators was that the blood was relatively fresh, while the other items seemed older. One theory: Lena had been there not long ago, or maybe she had escaped and returned later, in the same area. They found a dismantled mini GPS tracker, while the main board was damaged. The memory unit still held fragments of data. It had tracked repeated movements circling the canyon for weeks before the disappearance, but the device didn't belong to the Matsons. Its serial number traced to a man named Bryce Denham, previously investigated in 2012 for stalking hikers in another national park. He was never charged, insufficient evidence. Police followed his last known address, had moved out nearly a year ago, but neighbors recalled his garage being lined with maps, trail photos, and images from motion-triggered cameras, one neighbor said. I remember seeing a photo once, parents and two kids setting up a tent. I didn't know who they were, but now. It gives me chills. Bryce was added to the suspect list, though no proof had yet placed him in contact with the Matsons. But the strangest part was still to come. Another trail cam, hidden deep in the preserve and nearly 5 miles from where Jordan's keychain had been found, revealed a blurry but undeniable image. Tall figure dragging what looked like a body. The person wore a red jacket, a hood, and walked with a limp. What shocked investigators was that the red coat looked exactly like the one Marcus wore in the family videos. But if it was Marcus, why was he dragging someone in the middle of the night? And if it wasn't him, then who was wearing his jacket? When Lena's family, especially her sister, was shown the image, they confirmed instantly that was Marcus's coat, a red Columbia jacket with black trim, and a tear on the left sleeve battle scar from waterfall climbing. He'd once joked, the figure's height and limp added to the mystery. Was Marcus still alive, wounded and wandering, or worse, had someone taken his jacket to impersonate him as speculation about the shadowy figure deepened? Another twist emerged. An FBI voice analyst, enhancing the trail cam audio, discovered a chilling detail, a faint laugh deep and layered heard at the exact moment of the push in the video. It wasn't an animal, it was human, and it didn't match Marcos's voice, nor that of a child. It was something else, something calculated. Meanwhile, investigators uncovered an old photo buried in Marcus's hard drive, one that had never been posted online. A foggy ravine, a dark silhouette in the trees, facing away from the lens. The photo's metadata showed it was taken exactly a year before, also at Dusky Pines, when asked about the trip. Lena's sister vaguely remembered Marcus saying he went alone, scouting a new video series. He'd claimed, but he never shared details. He'd just said the place was beautiful but strange. A close friend of Marcusa, part-time documentary filmmaker, recalled Marcus once saying he'd nearly fallen from a cliff at Dusky. I heard footsteps behind me. He'd said, turned around, no one there. His friend thought it was just a spooky story for views. Now, he wasn't so sure. The questions kept piling up. Had Marcus encountered someone or something before? Was that figure still out there, watching, waiting as more statements, images, and recordings surfaced? The picture grew darker. This wasn't an accident. The Matsons had been stalked, misled, and systematically erased. And whoever did it might never have left the woods. 8 months after the Matson family disappeared, just as the world had begun to forget, everything changed on an early spring night. At exactly 2:17 a.m., a wildfire surveillance camera atop Mount Dusky captured something strange. The camera, programmed to sweep for heat signals, recorded a 30-second clip in it. 2 figures stood on a narrow rock ledge. One stood right at the cliff's edge, the other just behind. There was no sound, but the movement was unmistakable, a sudden push. The figure in back shoved the one in front off the cliff. Then, it paused for a few seconds before turning away and disappearing into the trees. The next morning, a technician reviewing the system's heat logs spotted the clip and immediately alerted local authorities. Within 4 hours, a rapid response team was mobilized, including park rangers, a state police officer, and a wilderness survival specialist. They brought medical kits, climbing gear, weapons, and recording equipment to verify the scene. When they arrived at the exact spot from the video, the ground still showed signs of disturbance, mud, sand, and a faint trail of movement from the night before. Near the cliff's edge, a small orange object clung to a rock. It was a child's glove, winter style, size XS, embroidered with a cartoon bear at the wrist. Investigators quickly confirmed it didn't belong to Jordan or Lila. Jordan had black mesh gloves. Lila's were light purple knit. This glove new. Unfamiliar raised two possibilities. Either there had been a third child, or someone had planted it to mislead the search. The second theory seemed more likely. Just minutes after reviewing the camera footage, the operations center detected another signal, GPS ping. Origin unknown, just 3 minutes after the video timestamp. When cross-referenced with old data, it matched the satellite phone once carried by Lena Matson. The phone had been presumed off-grid or dead since the first month. The signal was weak, but it lasted long enough to be triangulated. The coordinates led to a steep, uncharted ravine, dense with sharp rock and tangled trees. It was not a place anyone would stumble into by accident. The information was escalated to state-level authorities. A specialized search unit was formed, and the area was temporarily sealed off. Quietly, media attention spiked, but police refused to comment, because if that ping really came from Lena's phone, she might still be alive. And maybe the children, too, to reach the signal's location. The rapid response team had to trek through dense pine, slippery stone, and melting snow. The area wasn't on any official park map. It was a no-man's land, too steep, too foggy, too forgotten. Every broken branch, every scrap of cloth caught on a thorn was tagged and photographed. After nearly 4 hours, they reached a narrow opening, a ledge leading to a cave-like hollow. The ground leveled off. There were signs of human presence. Inside, they found a torn backpack straps frayed, part of it scorched. Inside, a half-used first aid kit, a melted protein bar, and a small notebook. The cover was clearly marked LM, Lena Matson. The early pages were routine survival notes, times, rations, pain meds. But the handwriting grew shaky, sentences fractured with fear. One entry stopped the team cold. Something has been watching us since the first day. I hear footsteps when we're sleeping. At first I thought it was an animal, but it's not. It's a voice, a whisper the wood creaks, but not from wind. After the notebook. They climbed a 6-meter rock face overlooking the ravine, and there, curled beneath a silver emergency blanket, were 3 figures. Lena Matson lay on her side, face smudged with dirt but eyes still open. Beside her were Jordan and Lilithan, shivering, lips purple from the cold, but alive. The scene stunned the rescue team. One ranger whispered, barely audible, "They're really here." After 8 months, Lena's vitals were low. She showed signs of blood loss and a broken leg, but remained conscious. Jordan was mildly dehydrated. Lila had a minor arm injury. When asked softly if she could speak, Lena whispered just a few words. "Help the kids first. I'm okay, they need light." Then she passed out. An emergency medevac helicopter was dispatched. The area went completely silent to ensure a safe landing. While waiting, rescuers set up a thermal tent, began IVs, and warmed the survivors. A trauma counselor knelt beside Lila and asked gently, "Do you remember anything?" Lila replied, barely audible. "I remember his eyes. They were red as the helicopter touched down on the canyon rim." Lena, Jordan, and Lila were airlifted one by one. The children were wrapped tightly in thermal blankets, placed side by side. Lena was last half conscious, murmuring the same 2 words, "Watching, watching." Her body couldn't hold temperature. Scratches, some fresh, some scarred, covered her back and sides. Dark bruises marked her shoulders and ribs. Doctors said the wounds weren't from falling. They were deliberate. As the helicopter disappeared over the ridge, the remaining team swept the scene. They found a narrow path beyond the cave, barely wide enough to walk, filled with dry branches and slick stone. But there were footprints, unusual ones, heavy left foot, right foot twisted outward, a limp, not Lena's, not either child's. A ranger determined they belonged to an adult injured or deformed. The trail led half a mile to a clearing, where trees had been chopped down in a perfect circle. In the center, cold ash, half-burned logs, and on a flat stone, something left behind, a black leather notebook, thick, bound by cord. Inside were detailed drawings of the dusky forest, not terrain maps, but behavioral charts, pages marked maximum rotes, camera blind spots, peak fog zones. One page showed the exact ravine where Lena and the children were found. Next to it, scrawled in shaky handwriting, "Too early. They're not ready." At the back were strange symbols, interlocking circles, wave-like spirals, the same symbols seen on the back of the man's coat in the store footage, and one final line, bold, smeared, written as if while walking. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't chance. And it's not over. The site was sealed. Reinforcements were called, but as the last ranger turned to leave, he paused, deep in the trees, where the shadows curved like a dark arch. He saw something, just for a moment, a pair of eyes reflecting light, then gone. After being airlifted to Seattle Medical Center, the Matson family was immediately placed under private medical care with 24/7 security. Lena regained consciousness after 36 hours in light coma and was moved to a special interview room not for formal questioning, but for psychological evaluation and basic event recognition. But when asked what happened, her response stunned the entire investigative team. Lena said she didn't remember being pushed off the cliff. She remembered their campsite, remembered someone sneaking into their tent on the second night, and then only fragments' rough hands. Breath against her ear, a flashlight flickering out, everything after that. She described as a wet, black dream, she said. There were times I thought I was dead, like I woke up in a version of the forest where there was no sound. The kids whispered all the time, and I was too afraid to ask them why. Investigators began to doubt her account. Was Lena suffering true memory loss from trauma, or was she hiding something a psychologist was brought in for deeper observation? His notes confirmed signs of PTSD, but didn't rule out memory selection or strategic omission. The concern deepened when they discovered something puzzling. Lena had left the ravine 3 times during their disappearance. Biological traces matching her DNA were found at 3 separate sites, each more than 2 miles from the shelter. If she had the strength to leave, why didn't she try to escape or call for help to complicate matters? Jordan and Lila told a completely different story. Both said their mother never left the ravine. Jordan insisted she didn't go anywhere. One night, I woke up and saw her covering Lila's mouth because there was a noise outside, but she never left. Psychological assessments confirmed both children were honest. No signs of coercion, no lying. The contradiction left the investigators stuck between a mother with a reason to protect a secret and 2 children too young to invent one. Things got stranger. Hair and blood tests revealed Lena had been injected with a sedative and outdated, off-market drug not available to civilians. It caused confusion, short-term memory loss, and dulled emotional response. It had once been used by the military in interrogation scenarios. No one could explain why such a substance was in the body of a mother on a camping trip. When this information came to light, lead investigator Lieutenant Reyna Morales proposed a new theory. If Lena had been held, even temporarily, then whoever held her had not only deep knowledge of the forest, but access to professional-grade tools, precision syringes, military-class drugs, psychological manipulation. This wasn't the work of a random drifter. It suggested a complex behavioral model, possibly a group, or a lone individual with military or paramilitary training. Meanwhile, evidence from the ravine uncovered other anomalies. A rope fragment recovered near the scene was identified as high-altitude climbing ropes in mountain rescue operations. It's not sold commercially. Only licensed professionals or certified climbers could purchase it. A purchase trace revealed only 4 individuals in Northwest Washington had acquired that rope in the past 2 years. One of them was Devin Hartley Marquez's old college friend. Devin's name had come up early in the case, after he sold Marquez camera gear on eBay. Now, with his link to professional climbing rope and the timing of that sale, he was brought in for another interview. Devin remained calm. He claimed he'd stayed in contact with Marquez right up to the disappearance, that Marquez had asked him to safeguard some equipment in case anything happened. When asked why Marquez wouldn't simply leave a message, Devin replied, Marquez didn't trust tech. He always thought someone was listening. But when police requested access to Devin's personal devices, he hesitated and then refused, citing privacy. That only raised more flags. Another discovery came from the black notebook found in the woods. Its final page contained a basic cipher when decoded. It revealed the GPS coordinates matching an abandoned cabin deep in Dusky, used by the military in the 1970s. The cabin had never appeared in any public record, but in classified state archives. It was listed as Pine Echo Base 04A, site used for physiological experiments in low-light isolation conditions. Lieutenant Morales requested an emergency warrant. A special ops unit reached the cabin overnight, covered in vines and tree roots. It looked untouched, but inside, signs of recent use fresh footprints, unexpired canned food, and a wall map with red markings tracing a path directly to the ravine where Lena and the children were found. The cabin had no power, no plumbing, but it was outfitted with a solar-powered recording system, 3 microphones embedded in the walls, linked to a hidden floor device. When the data was recovered, hundreds of hours of audio surfaced: forest sounds, wind, branches snapping, and at times, footsteps at night. But within that noise were 3 human voices: a woman, a child, and a third low, gravelly, deliberate. In one clip, the woman whispered, "I told them not to come here, he always hears in another." The girl said, "Mom said don't look in his eyes." And then, the man, "Don't let them leave. Don't let them tell. They are experiments, not meant to survive." That last line rocked the team to its core. If the tapes were real, this wasn't a kidnapping or an accident. It was something else entirely: deliberate, organized, controlled. When word reached state headquarters, the case files were immediately locked down. Certain elements were classified. No public disclosure allowed. Lieutenant Morales protested. She argued the public deserved the truth, that if experiments were happening, if a group was responsible, it must be exposed. But she was placed on leave, her credentials frozen, her case files seized for review. As she left the office, she realized she had stepped into something far beyond her rank. Meanwhile, independent journalists began reaching out to the Matsons. In a closed interview, Jordan said something that sent chills through everyone present. "I saw Mom talking to him, not when we were taken before that, in the car, on the way to the forest." That raised a disturbing possibility. Lena may have known more than she let on, that she'd made contact or struck some kind of agreement before the trip, but for what was she coerced or complicit? An anonymous former security contractor who worked in the Dusky region in the late 90s contacted the team. He said the cabin had once been part of a sensory deprivation test, site used to study how people react when isolated from light and sound for extended periods. "We used to keep volunteers there," he said, "but sometimes they said someone else was in the room, even when no one opened the door." Trust in the truth began to fracture. The disappearance of the Matson family was no longer just the story of a camping trip gone wrong. It was the last visible thread in a web no one dared name. And maybe no one would ever be brave enough to follow it to the end. 3 months after Lena and her children were rescued, the story quietly faded from headlines. Major news outlets framed it as a miraculous survival after 8 months missing, carefully avoiding the darker details: the footage, the journals, the testimony. Everything was classified and handed over to federal authorities. The Matson family was relocated to a temporary residence, under what many assumed to be witness protection, though no agency ever confirmed it. Lena, Jordan, and Lila now live in a small, nameless house in the southern suburbs. No mailbox, no visitors, as if they had never existed. In a leaked security video captured on a misty morning, Lena is seen standing outside the house, holding a mug of coffee, staring into the distance. A black, unmarked car passes by. She doesn't react. She just stands there, completely still. Much like what she said during her final interview before the case was sealed, "I don't know if we ever really got out. Some nights I still hear the footsteps. I don't know if they're in my head or out there." A former investigator from Lieutenant Morales' original team, who later resigned, sent an anonymous email to a group of independent reporters. In it, they wrote, "We found an unmarked cave behind the Pine Echo cabin. Inside were 3 torn fabric scraps, same material as Marcus's jacket. But no body." The last line still chills everyone who reads it. If Marcus died there, he took the body. If Marcus is alive, then maybe he's still being kept. Marcus Matson's case remains officially listed as missing unresolved. He was never found. No body, no signal, no closure. Only remnants: a torn red jacket, a cracked wristwatch, and one faint audio clip recovered from the cabin's hard drive. A whisper. "We shouldn't have come here, but now it's too late." Lilino, just 8 years old, sometimes draws strange pictures, dark, full of spirals. In one, there's a figure standing alone in a forest. Its eyes are glowing red, its arms spread wide as if calling someone's name. She's never explained it, and she's never once said her father's name. What really happened in those 8 months, who was watching them? Who acted, who lived, and who may never have existed, remains unanswered. But one thing is clear: Dusky Pines is no longer just a forest to hike or explore. It is a place that holds memories no one dares name. And every time someone goes missing, there be it a hiker, or a family on a weekend trip, whispers rise once more that the forest doesn't just take people, it keeps pieces of them, as a warning that forgotten truths become the most dangerous kind. Some disappearances break our hearts, but others leave society in silence, not because no one knows, but because no one dares to believe. The Matsons were once a quiet symbol of connection and love, wrapped in nature's embrace, but the very place meant to offer freedom swallowed them in a way no logic can explain. Looking back at the morning they left home, the wind-swept towel, the final flicker of panic in that 2:13 a.m. video, there is no clean narrative, just fragments. And each one slices into our belief that the world has order, reason, and justice. Maybe Marcus knew something. Maybe Lena heard what no one else could. Or maybe something exists beyond understanding. Something only those who faced it can ever comprehend. And if someone is still out there, wandering those woods, carrying stories never told, then perhaps silence is the only way to survive. We may never know what really happened, but some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some things are made to be left untouched, like Dusky Pines, like the Matson family, like those glowing red eyes that only children ever seem to notice. And as time passes, the news will grow old. But somewhere, deep in the woods, a camera is still recording, eyes are still watching, and questions remain, questions no one was ever meant to answer.